My direct competition is not necessarily buying cabinetry from me. It's a market that's doing the similar type of architecture, maybe a little different price point, sometimes a similar price point, maybe a smaller size project, but similar price point. But it's not the guy that I'm going to the bid table with on a regular basis.
So very excited today to be recording with Matt Shoberg. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
So Matt's the president of Shoberg Homes and also the president of the shop Fine Millwork. And, we had the pleasure of meeting. It's kind of, I have to give one backstory, but long story short, we had our coalition summit in Austin. We did some tours of your homes, which I was blown away. I mean, honestly, Matt, like you and I connected immediately. And I'm such a proponent of like site cleanliness and quality construction. And it's, I'll say there's, it's not that we compare against other builders, but we kind of do in a way. But I walked yours and I'm like, okay, Matt, his operation is legit. Like it was amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we enjoyed having you guys, and I will tell you, and you may hear this from time to time, but I'm sure you tour a lot of sites. But that's the way our job sites are organized, and the way they look on a regular. Don't get me wrong. When you guys came, of course, we're doing a little bit of dialing it in so that there's good thoroughfares for walking and what have you, and we kind of slowed our labor force down that day. But running a tight ship is highly important, as you know, and sets the tone for not only our subcontractor base, but also our employees to hold them to a high bar. And we're building a refined final product, so I tell them keep it tight and right from the get go, and it holds all, like I said, on the trade side, it holds them to a pretty high standard when they see the cleanliness, they're going to execute at a higher level. So yeah, thank you.
And I want to come back to the trade side because I think that's where a lot of builders, stub their toes, or maybe they have a hard time getting over that. Because I can say, not from a client perspective, but from just a colleague, comrade, if you will, in the building industry, walking your projects and seeing that level of detail, the quality, the care, the cleanliness. I mean, to me, it shows like Matt and his operation know what they're doing. And the funny backstory to this is when I was speaking with Doug pulled me aside, I think he's like your director of operations or, kind of runs a lot of the field. And he's like, Brad, Canon came out to interview with us. And the funny thing is, just truth be told, you've had a head start on me from years of business. You're a little bit ahead of me, Matt, and you've built this incredible business. So when Canon was and Canon's dad is an architect in town that we do a lot of work with. So when Canon was graduating from ASU construction management, he had interned with me for a couple of years, and we wanted to keep him and retain him. And his one caveat, he's like, at this time I was still kind of building the organization and layers and management and training and all these things. But he's like, there's a builder in Austin that has that. And I don't know how he stayed with me. I got lucky because I almost lost him to you. So, but you had that. You have a great operation that way.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it's a big, nationwide. There's a lot of us out there, but it is interesting when you have kind of a small world kind of aspect like that come up. And no, he that was an interesting. That was really cool. It was really cool to learn that we had a mutual contact in that. And of course, I'm not surprised that he's with your team. It's a testament to you guys. I mean, to him and to you guys that you can find good talent like that, but that he also made a good decision to land where he is. That's great.
Well, it was tough fighting. I'll tell you that much. So luckily, Cannon's phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure listen to podcasts. He's amazing, and
good company. It's good company. It's good company, right? Like you want to. We're doing the same thing, just different places. It's great.
So one thing that stuck out, and I want to get into some of the construction details you have, which are pretty unique, but maybe speak to this. You have your trades dialed in, your subcontractors, and I think that's pretty rare. The biggest pushback I get is, a lot of builders are like, well, Brad, how do you keep the site clean? Because, it's hard enough to get labor, but they won't show up. So how do you keep, your trade partners? How do you keep them dialed in, focused, staying on brand with what you are at Shoberg Homes?
So great question. So we're very blessed that I would say the majority, but I'll throw a number out, 60, 70% of our subs, we've been working with for anywhere between 5 and even 10 years. So my painter, my framer, handful of subs, we're going on a decade of work together. So those guys and the guys that that we're going on, 3 and 5 years, they just, they see what we're doing. They follow the lead of the trades that have had a longer tenure with us. But there's no substitute for project management. They're there to obviously to push the project along schedule and quality control of the finished product and communication with the owners and communication with the architect and getting the project built. But because we have a dedicated project management model, they're also tasked with being communicative, not just on the final product and the expectations on the fit and finish and what we're doing, but also just on the way that we operate on a day-to-day basis. And it's not, I know we're focusing kind of on cleanliness, but really it's about, what the outward representation of your job site is really an inward representation of how your subs and your project managers and everybody on the site thinks, right? And so they lead by example. Don't let this slip by. Our subs are really good at keeping their act together and running a tight ship and running a quality, clean focus on their work. But we do have some internal resources that supplement our sites. When we have 7 to 10 projects under construction, and we're spreading subs around, and we're sometimes calling on a sub to jump off of a job to come work on something that needs to get ready for the next phase, and they have to stand up and leave, and they may leave a bit of a trail behind them. We have an internal labor force of a total of about 12 guys, but focused on general labor and cleanup that roll through our job sites on a weekly basis. They spend an hour to 2 hours working with our PMs on things that are needed, stacking materials and just keeping things organized. So that's important, especially at the scale we're at. Not that we're at a crazy scale, but it's kind of 3 things, right? Like I said, it's the subs being trained up and us holding them responsible for their for their work, but also the way they work. It's our project managers not being afraid to speak to a high level subcontractor about some things that he needs to refine on his process, but then supplemented with basically a little bit of follow up organization from a general labor standpoint. So that those 3 things kind of work together.
Well, and if you don't mind, maybe something I noticed when I was there that may add to this. You touched on the PM side, but I think one of the separators is my experience in seeing builders that are very sophisticated is the level of, knowledge, know-how, site organization, schedule, whatever, from the superintendent, right? The superintendent, the PM, the back office, how those all play a role. And what I mean by that, when you walk your job sites, you have all the lighting laid out, you have walls laid out, you have, descriptions by room. So the entire house is mapped out accordingly to be constructed. And so by doing that, you're putting resources and tools in place for the subcontractors where now it's a pretty clear map for them to be successful in their role.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the plan set is obviously, a highly important document. And of course that's readily available at all times on site. We're digital, at a certain level with Procore and PlanGrid. But there's no substitute again for like, to your point, proper layout. And it's interesting. Several of my project managers, and so just to be clear on our kind of construction hierarchy or our organizational structure.
Chart. Yep.
Yeah. Our project managers in our community, a project manager is sometimes in other communities dubbed or described as a superintendent, but so our project managers wear 2 hats. They have a lot on their plate, so they're responsible for all aspects of construction. The way we supplement them is we have a vice president of construction who oversees all construction, and then Doug in the office. So you had mentioned him in the field. Really, Doug spends most of the time in the office. He's responsible for, along with the project manager, the financial health of the project. Scott, the field general, our construction VP of construction, he's ultimately responsible for the project management team. But the project managers eat, breathe, and sleep it all. So they're responsible for everything from architect interaction all the way down to job site cleanliness and everything in between. But what's interesting I was getting at is several of our project managers they've come up through the trades and we have several master cabinet builders that are now project managers, and along with other resume high points on their resume, but they really think about the finish, even at foundation phase. We all need to be doing that, but they're laying things out like they would be the ones that were installing the cabinetry. And so over the years, we've heard for, so we can rely on our subcontractor base for some of that. Lighting layout, sometimes can be done by a very qualified electrician. A less qualified electrician would struggle with that. Plumbers can lay out their need for faucet locations and commodes and what have you. Or we, but what my point is we've also noticed a need for even some of our high level guys for support. So we have an in-house carpentry team. We have, like I told you, we have about 12 in-house field employees that are actually performing work, anything from general labor all the way up to refined millwork installation outside of the shop. This is just, more of Shoberg Homes guys. But these guys, I'd say the top 8 of these guys are qualified and able to do layout at the frame stage, prior to frame, definitely at the detailed framing phase. So to your point, when you walked that job, we were in detail framing, kind of working with mechanical trades on their layout and all that. So we'll take all the information from the plan, and we kind of parcel it out. So if the electrician's qualified, he can lay out his own can lights, but we're going to go back and check them. As far as the HVAC guys go, and their alignments with can lighting and some integration in millwork and what have you, our in-house carpenters will do the layout on the slab with permanent materials such as red chalk or with the clear sprayed acrylic on top, so that they're not erased. We set a benchmark. Our typical benchmark is 52 inches above finished floor. So all of the install. So if you're measuring for an outlet placement or a switch or an AC register, it's all based on a benchmark rather than guessing. Okay, I think the floor in here is 1.5 inches. We're going to be close. We're going to use our hammer to set our outlet location, what have you. We're measuring down from finished floor for those things and up from finished floor from the benchmark for that, because we use, this is super technical, but we use, and I explained this to you a bit, we have a floating floor system on the majority of our homes. So not all homes are this way, but a lot of homes have a wood floor or what, it doesn't really matter what the material is, but we use a floating floor system. Inevitably, we use a really good subcontractor on our foundation, but there's going to be a bird bath, there's going to be a high spot. So we can eliminate any of that fluctuation in the slab by finding the high spot in the house. And then we use a 2 1/4 buildup, which is a 3/4 inch screed, a 3/4 inch subfloor, and a 3/4 inch finished floor, or some variation of that. And we set a benchmark, and so window heights are based off that benchmark when we're framing. All of our cabinet layouts, all of our critical alignments are based off of that. So in order to really, achieve to set that benchmark, to lay out all of our mechanical trades on that benchmark, both in vertical benchmark, but then also in alignments, like you said, we've been blessed to be able to have some really good carpenters that work that lay all that out, and they set up for the trades to be very successful.
I love that breakdown, and I'm going to come back to just the know-how from the benchmarks and the quality of people you have working for you and their experience in the trades. But getting back to the floating floor, one thing I noticed is, your level of quality of construction is totally different. You're using LSLs, right? You're using engineered
Correct.
studs as opposed to normal, stock lumber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And with the floating floor, there's a cost associated. And so there's a barrier sometimes, right? As you're working with clients to say, hey, I'm building a Shoberg home, but you get what you pay for. But again, you're going to be fighting the battle, I would imagine, just like many of us, where what's the comp? What's the appraisal? Am I overbuilding for a neighborhood? How are you bridging some of these things to say, look, these are my minimums. I'm going to do this floating floor. Here's why. There's a cost to that, walking through this process, but the end quality is there for sure.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. That is the age old challenge. And I guess the real answer to that is so our lead source tends to be referral, obviously, past client referral, and an architect, lead source, architects we've worked with, architects that have seen what we're doing that would like to work with us. And inevitably, before we meet with a client, our architects and/or our past clients, they tend to do some vetting on our prospect clients to make sure that whether a client, like a past client, is having an upfront conversation with the cost of their homes. Some probably do, depending on their relationship with who they're referring us to. So jumping kind of back to one of your questions on just kind of the appraisal and not overbuilding for the market. in our community, this isn't gospel, and you got to be careful with this. And now we're seeing our market. We're in a trough, if not a we're not. I don't know if we're in a steep valley right now, but you know it's not as hot as it once was. But in our particular market, it's not to say you can't overbuild here, but right where we are in Austin, and some of the special properties that we're blessed to be able to work on. Um, the majority of our clients, they have it in their mind. Cost is important, but they have been able to achieve equity, even or move into their home, even with the price point that we're at, with all the things with the standards that we hold, and be comfortable with their position, whatever their actual position is their own business. And but we've witnessed transactions where we build a home and the client either lives in it for a little while, or we've actually had one where they built it and they weren't planning on speccing, but they got an offer they couldn't refuse. So we have some of those stories that we can tell, but we also don't want to paint a picture of being an advisor to them as far as what their value of their home is. But we're working with generally very smart individuals, and they can do their own internal analysis. But that doesn't really answer your question in full. I think the real kind of answer is that, we could do a lot more work if we were to be able to not even really like go down to a level where we're uncomfortable, but do we have to use LSL framing? Well, have to is an interesting question, right? If we're looking at if the client's looking for the fit and finish that they expect from us, and that they've seen in past projects, and the reason that they're in our office interviewing with us, the answer is yes, you do have to. And sometimes they just need to hear that, because they're expecting the answer to be sometimes no, and here's what we can do. But if we're going to execute, if we're going to have zero trim applications, if we're going to have floor to ceiling glass with a very refined fit and finish, if your materials are going to meet each other, rough materials are going to meet soft materials, plasters are going to align perfectly with window frames, those things, then the answer is yes, we do have to. And sometimes they just need to hear that, and then they go, oh, well, okay, great. And then they're getting that same feedback from the architect, if you will, from a kind of not necessarily independent, but somewhat independent third party, going, this is what you get. If we can come up with some more forgiving details, and you can probably start to come off of some of the required standards that Shoberg does. But when they start to show them what they're giving up, the majority of our clientele see the value in it, right? So they end up, not always, but they end up it gives them a decision point if that's what they're really wanting to do, is have that execution.
When was that turning point? When did you get to a point where you could start offering, saying all of our framing is going to be LSLs? Or why was the decision made? Right. I mean, walk through like the benefit of it as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, it has nothing to do with the structural capacity. So I'll answer the first part of the question first. Second part first. It's really so. Obviously, they're straight. They're engineered. They're cut. They're slit cut. They're perfectly straight. They have no deflection. They don't bow in any kind of atmospheric conditions, and it holds our framer, who's an incredible framer, to more accountable. So when we were using conventional lumber, if a wall was out of plumb, or we had a bow in it, or a belly, or some issue, our framer wasn't trying to circumvent or scapegoat. He wasn't using the framing as a scapegoat. He was actually telling the truth. If we have let me back up. So every once in a while, if you have an out of plumb wall, the framer can blame it on the lumber if the lumber also has a belly in it, or a bow in it, and it's just kind of a bad wall, and they can go, well, we're dealing with crappy lumber, and we'll come back and fix that, but there's going to be a cost to it. Well, if we eliminate the deflection in the studs and the movement and what have you, and that wall's out of plumb and it's laser straight lumber, it's on, then he's held to the regard of fixing that, right? So 5, 8, 9 years ago, we started saying, well, what are the things we can do to keep our framer from having that kind of, that out? And so we moved to LSL lumber and some other things, right? Same with the flooring, right? These are the same conversation. If we have a slab, we work with one of the best foundation contractors in Texas, but we're talking about a 7,000 square foot slab that in some cases is 200 feet long. And if there's a discrepancy of a half an inch, it's so far within tolerance of any concrete standards, it's not even close, right? You can have, I think levelness is, an eighth of an inch and 10 feet or something like that. And you've got a 200 foot long foundation. That's 28. That's 28, so you could have 2 inches. He's nowhere near out of that. But when you have floor to ceiling glass, And before we kind of knew the tricks of what we want to do, we'd be on one side of the house and having maybe we have a stucco line that's supposed to hit the top of the windows, and we get into an issue where that expansion joint or that expansion joint we're having an issue with it. And we're like, what's going on here? So we're starting to shoot it, and we're like, okay, on the next one, we got to come up with a system. So to the finished floor or to the floor, I'll try to wrap this into a nutshell here. We worked with a really great architect. We still work with this really great architect, Blue Architects, and he explained to us a builder that one of my mentors now, and a more senior builder in our community, that came up with a fix for that, and he shared it with us, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And it was about the same time we were working on our holding our framer accountable for true walls and plumbness and levelness. And so we started to kind of, and at that same time, we were fortunate enough to start, to have some clients they loved what we were doing, and they were willing to do those things as long as they had a guaranteed result. And thank goodness we were able to guarantee that result and hit that guarantee. And then it's like, why wouldn't we be doing this? Well, to your point, there is a reason. It has costs, but in this we're very, very fortunate and blessed to be in this community. Around that same time, we started seeing clientele that had that desire. We had some more people coming into town with some sales wherever it may be in California, and coming in and trading dollars for value and expecting a high level of fit and finish. And so we were able, and we were very patient. We weren't doing this standard across all projects. We kind of we have to keep the lights on also. But eventually, probably to answer your question, probably in around 2018, 19, pre-pandemic, we were really getting really good looks at projects that had the budget that would allow for the majority of these things. And then we had the pandemic, and that kind of put that on steroids. People were really wanting to be, they wanted to, people were working from home. They were thinking about working from home. They wanted more space. They wanted to spread their family out a little bit in the home so they could be comfortable. They wanted to build bigger homes. The pandemic also sent more people to Austin that had the ability to build homes like this, the desire. And so we were positioned well, and we were able to, kind of start making some of these things our standard. And now they are, and we're marketed that way by our architect community, and then we follow up by executing. So,
and I think it's really sound advice, because what it goes to show, Matt, is that a lot of our clients, right, they only know what they know, right, and so if you're building a brand, whether it's building science, whether it's net zero, whether it's a combo, whether it's LSLs, as you mentioned, the level of detail you're putting in, there is a client base for that, in a lot of markets. And essentially you have to have, one, the know-how, two, the systems, and number three, like the determination to get there. And then when you do that, you're going to build a reputation, and, that's going to soar. When people walk it, it'll stick out to the level of detail. I know from my perspective, conventional lumber is very difficult. And when you're trying to do a high quality home and you have little wing walls and pony walls and, cabinet walls that, no matter how much you fur that out and, walk through and level, padded level, furring strips. I mean, everything we do in a house, it doesn't matter. You get to the final result, and then you're laying out this highly expensive wood floor and all the trim, and you're like, what are we working with here? What's our backing?
Right. Yep.
So now going back to the superintendent side, I think something that's really interesting is one of the challenges, I think, for many of us that have management in the field is the superintendent or project manager or VP of construction. I mean, whoever's forward facing in the field, there's a fine balance to, one, as you alluded to, they have to have really good construction knowledge, right, of the trades and of the scope of work and, ebbs and flows and predecessors, successors, like how to schedule a house. And then you have the management side. Can they manage people, right? Can you manage trades? And a very high stressful, can you manage clients? Can you manage the architect? And so the management side's tough. And then you have to have the organizational skills, whether it's Procore, Builder-Trend, or Bluebeam, or, some of the software and, the systems you have in place. How have you pulled that together, found success in hiring and find the right people? Because you mentioned that a lot of your really skilled people were in the trades. How hard was it for them, if they were in the trades, to then pick up the organizational side, the software side, as well as the management side?
Yeah, great question. It's not all roses, but we're blessed that we have the pros of the majority of our management team outweigh the cons. The cons may be, like you said, that they're they understand what we're trying to do from a fit and finish standpoint. They understand how to work with subcontractors, for example, to get there, but they may struggle a little bit with the architect communication, or vice versa. They're just really great communicators. All of our guys understand what we're trying to achieve, so that's kind of baked in as far as the level of quality. But they may, sometimes. So we also have a project coordination division in our company, and the project coordinators, they oversee usually 2 projects at a time, and project managers oversee 1. So our PCs are going back and forth between 2 projects. So sometimes we have, there's a lot of people in our company, and so the human aspect can be challenging in personality fit and communication styles and things like that. So what we do is we meet often. I'm available. Doug in our office is available. Scott Griffin is always available in the field, and we have to referee a little bit. We have to have meetings that get everybody in a room, and we work out whatever, whether it's a construction related conversation or a communication related conversation. We as a management team, as an executive team, we're very available and intentional about working with our team members. They're not on an island. They're not expected to just figure it out, or, hey, we're all adults here, play nice, what have you. We say, look, let's use this as a growth opportunity. And then, but I do want to touch on another question you had. It's like, if they're proficient at one thing but may lack in another, how do you help with that? Well, we have meetings and we have availability for meetings with our project managers, together, so they can learn from one another. They're very busy, and I'd like to see that happen more. But when someone's having a lot of success in the technical side of things, we have one individual in our company who's came with. So we've recently converted to Procore, and we're doing it right. And that's easy to say, but the reason I say that is I've had some feedback from the architecture community. They're like, "Oh, you're working on Procore? We'll see how that goes in 2 years," because a lot of companies have gone for it, but then they're like, right. "Oh my gosh, it's just like, it's too robust." Well, I don't think they have anybody administrating it, and they may not be the right size organization for it. You have to have somebody that really knows it, that is available for questions and feedback. And you can watch a video all day long on. You can watch all 500 videos that Procore has. They're great. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to answer specific problems or what have you, or workarounds, or so we have what I'm getting at is we have team members that are good at different things, and the idea is, and it works most of the time, and we're going to be getting better and better at it in letting those people work to get together. The layout conversation. So our 2 project managers that came from the cabinet side of things, if you will, they're extremely good at layout and just pre-thinking. Well, our gentleman that is the software expert and what have you, I won't say that he's not good at layout, but if and when, by the way, he's fairly new. He's a year in, so he's about to be on in the layout phase. And I would encourage him, if he has any questions about how that, what's the best process for that, or when do I need to be doing it, or what am I need to be looking for, that he goes to Joe or Jacob and goes, "Hey, we come walk this slab with me. Let's talk about the things that you've done that are successful." And like, if that can happen organically, that's gold. As a business owner, if your team's communicating without you, and I don't have to set up a meeting and say, "Okay, you hold his hand and you guys go work together." I don't, and I'm not having to do that, but the more that can happen, they've got each other's phone numbers. Let's schedule a time to work together. But I also don't want to leave this out. Our VP of construction, Scott Griffin, he's a trained architect. He's a past business owner, design build company in Houston in his previous career. And the way he holds the field together is fantastic. And so he can remind them to communicate, or he can be part of the communication. "Hey, let's go over and you're struggling with this. Who does that really good is so-and-so. Let's go over there and spend a half a afternoon, talking about that." Or in a more of a time crunch, Scott can just relay that information. It's like, "Hey, this is what we're doing over here. Just follow this recipe for now, and you'll see the success in it. And then as you do that, we'll communicate on why and what, but just to get the job done, here's what we do." And the field has the respect for him that they go, all right, great, thank you. So communication within the team organically, but then when needed, executive level, support to bridge gaps and continue to, for those guys to learn in their deficiency and then, and be outward with what they're really good at.
Yeah, I love the support channels, and when you can build to that organizational chart, makes a huge difference. I mean, hence this conversation started with talking about Cannon, who was looking at joining you, and that was a huge reason why, is that he saw from afar. I mean, he had been referred by an architect and had done some research on you, and he was pretty adamant, when he and I sat down about just that level of sophistication, if you will, the support you have, which makes a big difference for retainage and keeping people. You have a project coordinator role, and I have that too. There's a lot of builders that ask me about that role. And I can explain mine in a minute. When you look at the project coordinator, and you mentioned they all run about 2 projects, what's typically their focus?
So they liaise between primarily on the selection side. In our world, we have kind of our team member list would be owner, architect, builder. That's kind of the triangle, right? But not all of our architects provide interior design, materials, finishes, selections, fixtures, things like that. So most of the time, there's a third party or fourth party in this case, interior designer, and they are usually involved pretty early. And our architects locally leave their drawings at a state that's ready for those designers to come infill information. And as we know, some of the finishes that designers pick, they don't necessarily contrast with the plan, but they can cause, in a wall section, they can cause issues with dimensions and what have you. So the earlier they get in, we start soliciting the information that we need. The project manager's out there, starting the foundation, or he's getting framing going, and he's got this laundry list of things that may need to be looked at a little closer before we go build them, because there may be a 3 cm material instead of a 1/2 inch tile, and that's going to and it's got to tuck behind a window frame with 0 tolerance, and that means we need to adjust framing and what have you. So our PCs start to work with our project managers early on. Hey, what information do you need? And then they're going upstream, or to the primarily into the interior designer, but also into the architects as well. And they're bridging like the communication gap there, and kind of holding people accountable, and the owners as well, from a timing standpoint on when materials and finishes and fixtures are required. They also go out to the field and work with the project managers on certain aspects, like understanding why they need a material thickness is important. It's not just that we need it; it's also teaching and helping the PC understand why, so that then they can look through the plan and go, hey, I wonder what else would be good to kind of know what we're doing here, prior to us having to reframe something or what have you. They're also in our company. The project manager is ultimately responsible, but they work with the project managers on changes of scope and change events that then have the potential to become a change order. So financial impact. They are available for most meetings to take notes alongside. We encourage our project managers and project coordinators to take duplicate notes and then compare those notes prior to writing the meeting minutes and submitting the meeting minutes for review to the architects or whoever's attending the meeting. So there's an administrative side to PCs, but primarily the job description reads as a liaison between the design team, which includes the architect, but also the designer and the field. And then a kind of a secondary role is project specific finance and change event management and administration.
Yeah, I think we're very similar. I mean, our coordinators as well, in addition to what you're mentioning, I mean, they're reviewing window drawings and signing off, cabinet drawings. They're going through that level of detail. They're working with the RFIs and submittals, right, with the design team. And maybe speak to this. I mean, the way we do it is our project coordinators are typically handling all the change orders. So they're kind of coordinating with the field and then putting that potential change order log in front of the client, so the client's aware of what's upcoming or changes they may be requesting or what's outstanding. And so they're heavily in financials too, because
Right.
They're also that safeguard as far as, when the AP comes in, all the payables, they're checking to make sure, compare with contracts and budgets and make sure that things, lining up, because I would imagine you're cost plus like I am.
That's correct. And yes, that's a very similar description. Yep. One difference is, for the most part, our project coordinators, they're reviewing certain shop drawings, but not others. So
Mm-hmm.
windows and doors, steel shops, cabinet shops, architectural steel shops, things like that. Most of the time, that's handled by our project manager. But slab layouts, tile shop drawings, interior elevations, they do work with the PMs on cabinet shops. So that it's kind of two things. There's like the technical review, which is handled by the project manager, but then there's the architectural review, or the the layout review, which our project coordinators absolutely work on with the interior designers. They're kind of speaking the same language, getting it. We want a drawer here, we want this, transition, what have you. But then when it comes to the layout, the sizing, what have you, then so there's kind of two sets of review, which is great. That's not on all things. Again, there's certain things that our project managers are reviewing that are more technical, and then there's an equal amount, if you will, of kind of finish level shop drawings and submittals that our PCs are working on. Yep.
With the size and scope of projects, they're incredibly complex. I mean, I walked them, and I think your remodel that you did is probably the biggest remodel I've ever seen. I mean, if I won't say the price here, just to keep this private, but let's just say that, the remodel is bigger than pretty much anyone builds like at a normal house. From that side, you're also, which was very impressive going through this house as well, is we touched on this at the very beginning, that you have your own millwork shop, the Shop Find Millwork. And I'll just be open. I got to see it firsthand, the level of detail and quality in the craftsmanship and the millwork and all the cabinetry. Glutton for punishment. I mean, why start your own cabinet division as well?
No, not a glutton for punishment, but there's some of that. But they really, I mean, it was out of necessity, 100%. One thing that I will, kind of tell you about myself, that I believe in myself, is being able to I'm a visionary. And so that can be challenging, right? Because you're thinking ahead a lot, but in certain circumstances that can really be helpful, because we in 2020, we experienced this incredible amount of work influx, and we didn't take it all, but we took a good growth step. And we were sitting there as a team, executive team, going, okay, we're pretty sure we can do this, but let's look at what some of the hangups could be. And there were some minor ones that we were like, we can solve for those, with traditional methods and just some good elbow grease, right? Like, let's just get it done. But there was one that was staring us in the face, and it wasn't just with the amount of work that Austin had, the growth that Austin has seen. It also happened with, so it was in the millwork, obviously. I'm getting at it was in millwork, and we were working with two specific companies, two vendors. They both experienced different kinds of issues, and I'll save the whole story because I don't want to be derogatory. But there are two different types of challenges. One was too much work, and one was I think the principal was kind of done and ready to do something different. But it doesn't really matter what the problem was. They both had issues, and we were finishing up projects with those companies and we were like, obviously, the end user. So we were experiencing the fallout of the issues. And I mean, the last thing I enjoy fine millwork and refined construction, but it would have been much easier to have the opportunity, somebody else out there that we could have thrown all this work at, and it would have been successful, but we didn't see it. So we buckled down, and I mean, we started literally from scratch. I mean, our first build, we have two 9,000 foot buildings. So 18,000 feet in total. They were both blank slabs. I mean, luckily there was a beautiful industrial park that we were fortunate enough to find space in. But I'm talking about not one piece of machinery. We started hiring. The interesting thing about the two companies that were struggling is they also had some internal turmoil with some of these really, really great men and women that work for them. If we were experiencing the challenges, they were also experiencing the challenges within the confines of their company. So I didn't really have any other option. I didn't want to be vulturistic, but when I started reaching out to some of my favorite individuals at these two organizations, not everybody came from there, but they were like, when do we go, boss? I mean, we love working for you guys. We know you guys can perform. Let's do it. And I was so encouraged, and the Lord was all over it, because we were starting from scratch. And so I had some very key employees come on early, with amazing experience, but almost more drive than even experience. I mean, they have plenty of experience, but grit and determination, and through the proper structure with job responsibilities and potential for equity and things like that. I got a lot of buy-in, and I look back and can't believe how successful it's been. And I don't mean successful necessarily on the balance sheet side, but just on the work side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, and of course, the key to it was being able to have control. And control, people think control can be like a negative. I mean, I'm not talking about that negative kind of control. I'm talking about being able to perform for the shop supports Shoberg Homes. Now the shop has been able to grow to the point where we are working with some other builders, like-minded builders, and that's really awesome. But it was started to be a support to be able for us to control the outcome of our refined of the furniture and the the lipstick of the home, and so it hasn't been all roses, but it's been a lot better than honestly I had even expected. I knew we would get it done, and that's another thing about being a driven visionary. I'm like, it's like sink or swim moment, right? And we weren't going to sink, so it's been really great.
It's amazing. And, maybe not getting into specifics, but there's a lot of capital. I mean, you mentioned you have to find warehouse space. There's equipment. This equipment is not cheap for the level of cabinetry, level of detail that you're putting out in the market, Matt. I mean, how did you strategize just, having the vision to the reality of cost, employment, game plan, bidding, estimating, making sure you're somewhat profitable?
Yeah. Well, there were some leaps of faith there. I won't like smoke and mirror you, or I don't know. I won't like tell you that we had it all figured out from the get go. But I also won't tell you that it was just a shot in the dark by any means. I mean, it was north of center on that. I mean, we absolutely ran numbers, but then like you can run a number and then and it tells you that you probably shouldn't make an investment in an edge bander. We're just going to do it kind of old school and apply it. At least for the interim, we're going to apply it by heat and glue and with an iron. I mean, I'm making up one specific thing, and the number tells you that. But the team, the men and women that work there, the mental, the morale, all that, combined with the fact that you can't be short-minded. Like obviously, I mean, I'm using an edge bander. There's hundreds of decisions, but obviously we're going to need one. And then it comes down to to the question on capital. And Shoberg Homes has seen success for we're 15 years into this community, and so personally, being the principal of Shoberg Homes, I was able to to have capital to be able to at least get the shop where it needed to be self-sufficient, and it was quite an investment, and I'm very, very glad that we did. But my wife is my partner, and but she trusts me, and it took a lot of trust, and I give her a lot of credit, and I thank her often for it, across all things we do as a partnership team, not just the shop specific, but we built this business together. But there's some swallow hard moments, but the drive is there. I mean, none of this could be done without the market. I mean, we have to remember that, right? And so we're so blessed and fortunate for that. But it's also not just automatic. You could be in the best market in the country, which we're in one of them, but not have the buckle down and the team and like I say, having the Lord, guiding me to be confident in decisions that are made. And so now we're several years in, we're 2.5 to 3 years in, maybe more. I'm trying to think, into full production with the shop, and it's hit a stride. And then, just per any kind of, forward-thinking person, like I say, we're growing a bit and working with some other like-minded builders, and We're kind of feeling out what that looks like. And now we do have some balance sheets we can study and make sure that, that we're, to your point, bidding things correctly and what have you. But there for a little while, we kind of just had to, there was a certain point where we kind of looked at what the market is demanding for this type of millwork. And we just set our pricing structure there, not knowing what it would cost to build the cabinetry, because I wasn't going to sell my cabinetry to my clients for more than we could get it in the market. Mm-hmm. But I also wasn't necessarily feeling like I needed to sell it less then, because we didn't have the data yet. So we sold it to our clientele as, we're going to charge you market value for these cabinets, but you're going to benefit from the quality. There's a triangle, right? We're going to give you the schedule and the quality no matter what, but you're going to pay market value. And now we have that data, and we're realizing that in reality, the market value was exactly right. I mean, we're not raking money in hand over fist, but we're able to be a sustainable business. So it just turns out that, and it's not always this way, but in this circumstance, it turned out that was a good place to start. And so we have, like I say, we have that data, and we're market competitive.
It's interesting that you're working with your competitors too. Has that been, was that a pitfall? Was that a challenge to say, okay, we're still performing this, we have our own brand of Shoberg Homes, we're highly competitive in the market. We're building a great brand. How did you bridge that gap to say competitors hire me, supplement me, and, I'm still going to be competing with you, from the custom home side?
So two answers to that question. One, the main one is we're not necessarily working with our direct competition. Austin is a really great community, and I know personally, the majority of our competitors, and we share information. There's been plenty of work, which is kind of the catalyst for that. If it was a tighter market, people tend to draw hold their cards a little closer to their vest. But my direct competition is not necessarily buying cabinetry from me. It's a market that's a little different. It's not a sub market necessarily. It's a market that is doing the similar type of architecture, maybe a little different price point. Sometimes a similar price point, maybe a smaller size project, but similar price point. And by the way, we're only working with a handful of other builders. But I don't think that. Yeah, to your point, the direct competition isn't necessarily knocking down our doors to buy cabinetry from us, but there is a market, and there is a group of builders that are very happy with working with us. But it's not the guy that I'm going to necessarily going to the bid table with on a regular basis.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, one thing I want to touch on, you mentioned this earlier with design, with the coordinators and how they're coordinating with interior design. How's that relationship been between you? I would imagine you have designers on every project with the level of detail you're putting in, and then you're coordinating that design, not just from a constructability, architect integration, client, their interactions, but also the cabinet side. Designers are heavily involved with the cabinet selection and samples and stain and everything that goes into it. How's that relationship between the two parts from Shoberg as well as the cabinet side and your interior design?
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I'll tell you we've really hit a home run on, and I say that not
I love it. It's good.
Yeah. No, I know. So first of all, our design and engineering team over at the shop is a real division of the company. We have 2 full-time engineers. The engineers are tasked with the working drawings, basically the shop drawings. And then we have a full-time designer. She's actually in Houston. She works remote, but she's full-time and she's incredible. And I kind of went backwards. So we start with design. That's an AutoCAD, type drawing that gets kind of 1 layer or maybe 2 layers deep in detailing. It gives the interior designer and the architects enough information to make any changes they want to make. It tells the story of the way things come together, the planes that things are at, how the countertops are going to be laid out on, certain details. And that's what we allow for redlining. And so once it gets through red lines, it gets the submittal gets approved, the design submittal gets approved. Then it goes to engineering. Engineering is a robust process. So we take those drawings, we don't scrap them. They become a background to a much more powerful engineering software that's proprietary. And that's when we get into our technical drawings that the project managers and that we need. And and they're the best shop drawings that I've ever seen in cabinetry. They really are. We I've asked and tasked the shop to draw one layer outside of our cabinetry. So if we have steel plate or marble walls that are interacting with our casework, or HVAC, toe kick registers and returns, and where other materials, soft materials like plaster are coming in and dying, I've asked them to draw one layer outside of the elevation, so that the architect can review that from a technical standpoint, but more importantly for the superintendent or project manager to know how he sets his substrates up that are receiving first the cabinetry, but then the other finishes that come into the cabinetry, and they become these are the drawings. I mean, we absolutely have the drawings from the architect on site at all times. I mean, that's goes without saying, but these are the drawings that are actually getting stapled to the wall in a laminate form that our subcontractors, our plumbers, our electricians, our trim carpenters, our plaster subs, our steel subs are using for their finishes to work off of. So on the field side, like I said, it's really great. And on the design and approval side, I feel like we've had nothing but really great feedback that our drawings are top notch.
You're doing some amazing things. What do you feel is your biggest achievement?
Oh, well, it's the people, the team. It's the most challenging, but I don't mean that in a negative. I love people, and I didn't know that about myself. Because I didn't have any. There for a while, it was the way that I came up through the business was built single project, kind of on site all the time, and building the home, and then taking on a little bit more work, and then the first hire. But I found that we're building homes, but what I'm building right now is a family of amazing people. I mean, we're 40 people strong, and there's days where there's challenges with people, but there's the majority of the days I'm just blown away by the people that have dedicated themselves at a high level to what we're doing, and have given me positive feedback, because you can be your own worst critic, and that it's not all perfect, and mistakes are made, and challenges they come up often, and you just hope that you're making good decisions and that you're supporting people. But our turnover or lack thereof is a testament to that, and I think that's right now what I'm most encouraged by, and a really interesting achievement. Not knowing 10 years ago that I would be saying that, it would be more it would have probably been more about, we built a really great big house in an awesome neighborhood with good details. Yes, that's awesome, and that's what we do. But it's the people, and how much of we've been able to maintain a pretty strong family, feel, even with some scale.
It's amazing. Matt, you've been incredible, and I want to be sensitive to your time because I asked you for an hour today, so we'll keep it there.
That was quick, buddy. Thank you. That was very, very enjoyable. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you move fast, just like in business. I mean, it is impressive, and I at the end of this, for sure, I'm going to have you leave your information, because I think anybody, that is looking to excel their business, they need to be following you and seeing what you're doing, because you're doing, amazing work, and I've seen it firsthand, and long overdue to get you on. I know it's been coordinating some schedules here. So for those listening, what do you have upcoming and exciting? What do you do for fun, and where can they find you?
Okay. So, well, what we have upcoming is we're right here just in Austin doing the same thing that this is us, and this is where we want to be. We've been blessed to be put here, and we don't plan on going anywhere. I have 4 boys, 15, 14, 10, and 6, and we do everything you can think that boys do. We play a lot of sports. We love the Lord. We play. Like I said, we're sports oriented family, but we'll be spending quite a bit of time out on the water this summer. We like to boat. We have a little lake house out about an hour outside of town, so we'll be out there for the 4th of July with a awesome friend and family that grew up with, and we've been have a tradition where we meet up together. So that'll be super exciting, and we're just we're we're very blessed. It's an awesome thing. So so our website, I think that's kind of what you mean how they find me. Shoberghomes.com, very very simple. SHOBERG homes.com, and we're on Instagram as well. And yeah, please check us out.
Well, Matt, you've been amazing. I appreciate you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Rod. Appreciate it.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.